I am Larry Hatcher. This is Psych 302, Computer Applications in Data Analysis. And today we're going to take a look at lecture notes for Chapter 120, ANOVA with one within subjects factor. In this particular video, I'm going to talk about pages 1 through 25, and we'll see what is ANOVA with one within subjects factor all about. How do you perform the analysis in Jamovi? That is what the focus of this video will be. In the next video for next week, we'll see how to make sense of the results of that analysis variance and how to write it up. As always, reminder to my Psych 302 students, you do not need to download the data set or perform the analyses described in these notes. Simply use these lecture notes as a guide when you complete your exercise, which will involve a totally different data set. Let's scroll down to where things are highlighted. I'm at the top of page 2. ANOVA with one within subject factor, basic concepts. Analysis of variance with one within subject factor is used to determine whether there's a significant and substantial difference between means obtained under two or more treatment conditions from just one sample of participants. Specifically, the analysis involves a single continuous criterion variable. It involves a single categorical predictor variable, which consists of a limited number of conditions, typically just 2 to 6. We compute mean scores on the criterion variable for each of these conditions and perform a series of analyses to determine whether the differences between those conditions is statistically significant and of substantial magnitude. This procedure is used to analyze data from a within subjects research design, that is, one in which repeated measures are taken from each participant. Scrolling down a bit lower on page 2, illustrative investigation, screen size, and reading enjoyment. Imagine that an electronics corporation has developed a new line of e-readers, electronic tablets similar to the Kindle or the Nook, which can be used to read electronic versions of books and magazines. The company's primary research and development division has developed 3 different versions of the e-reader and wants you to determine which version is most highly rated by college students who will eventually use them. Only difference between the 3 e-readers involves the size of their screens. Specifically, one version of the e-reader has a 6-inch screen, one version has a 10-inch screen, and one version has a 12-inch screen. Research method. You conducted a repeated measures investigation with a sample of just 10 college student volunteers. At one point during the semester, a given participant spent 2 weeks using the 6-inch e-reader and rated how much he or she enjoyed it by completing the reading enjoyment rating scale. At a different point of time in the semester, the same participant spent 2 weeks using the 10-inch e-reader and provided a separate score on the same reading enjoyment variable. At yet another point during the semester, the same participant spent 2 weeks using the 12-inch e-reader and provided yet another score on the same scale. I'm on page 3 now, dependent variable. The criterion variable, dependent variable in the study was reading enjoyment. Total score on this reading enjoyment scale could range from 1 to 100. Higher scores reflected greater self-reported enjoyment. Each participant provided 3 scores on this criterion variable. One score reflected the subject's reading enjoyment when using the 6-inch screen, one reflected enjoyment when using the 10-inch screen, and one reflected enjoyment when using the 12-inch screen. The independent variable was screen size. This was limited value variable consisting of the 6-inch screen condition, the 10-inch screen condition, and the 12-inch screen condition. Research hypothesis for this investigation: reading enjoyment scores will be higher in the 12-inch screen condition than in the 10-inch or 6-inch conditions, and those in the 10-inch condition will be higher than those in the 6-inch condition. We scroll down to page 4. Halfway down page 4, the section begins starting Jamovi and opening the data set. We continue to page 5. Starting the Jamovi application, The way you start Jamovi depends on whether you're using the installed version or the online version. And below this, I give instructions for both approaches. Finding and opening your Jamovi data file. I'm on page 6 now, toward the top of page 6. This assumes that you have the Jamovi data file already saved on a drive. All you need to do now is locate that data file and open it up within the Jamovi application, which you had already opened. At the top of the left of the Jamovi interface, and yes, this is the Jamovi interface, at the top left of the Jamovi interface, select the file icon. That's the icon that looks like an air vent, the 3 horizontal lines. This opens up the file panel. So in this file panel, select Open. And in the resulting Open panel, select Browse. The resulting Open dialog box, in the resulting Open dialog box, navigate your way to the drive where you had saved your Jamovi data file. Double-click the name of that data file. And the data file opens in the Jamovi spreadsheet. You're now ready to perform analyses. Reminder to my Psych 302 students, remember, you're not opening this data set, you're opening the data set that's relevant to the exercise that you are to perform. So at this point, we have opened the data set in Jamovi. We're ready to get started. Let's scroll through some explanatory setup material. Let's go down to the bottom of page 9. Bottom of page 9. Requesting plots and descriptive statistics. Analysis of variance is based on specific assumptions concerning the populations from which the samples were drawn. Therefore, one of our first tasks will be to request descriptive statistics and plots that will help us decide whether those assumptions are satisfied. Page 10. Let's begin doing those analyses, which will determine whether our assumptions are satisfied. We're going to begin with some descriptive statistics. Therefore, select the Analyses tab to produce the Analyses ribbon. From the resulting Analyses ribbon, select the Exploration icon. And from the resulting ribbon, or from the resulting pull-down menu, select Descriptives. This should open up the Jamovi Descriptives procedure. When you first open the Descriptives procedure, you know that you're looking at the Analysis Options panel for Descriptives because it says Descriptives at the top. On the left, you have a large box, which is your variable list. This is the list of all the variables in your data set. And sure enough, these are the variables we expected to see in our data set. We scroll down to page 11. In the Descriptives Analysis Options panel, move the names of the quantitative criterion variables here. My criterion variables were named size 06, size 10, and size 12. Those were the variables that contained scores on the dependent variable. Size 06 contained scores on the reading enjoyment dependent variable for when people were looking at the 6-inch screen. Size 10 contains enjoyment scores when they were looking at the 10-inch screen. Size 12 contains scores when they were looking at the 12-inch screen. They began the variable list on the left. We have selected them and moved them over to the large box on the right side of the Analysis Options panel. With that done, check these boxes in the Statistics section to request the kinds of statistical, specific statistics that we will want to look at the Descriptives output table. And also check these boxes in the Plots section to request specific plots. It'll help us see whether we have satisfied our assumptions. If you do not see under the bar-headed statistics, if you don't see all of these boxes to check, just click the little arrow to the left of the heading statistics and it'll reveal all of your options. Same thing is true if you do not see the plots. Check the little arrow to the left of the heading plots and it'll reveal all of your options for plots. I'm at the bottom of page 11. Adding your name to the results panel. This is something that my students have been doing all semester long. The typical procedure, click the heading results, and then in the teeny little line below the heading results, type your name there so that your name will appear in the results panel once you've started doing your analyses. I am still on page 12. On page 12, halfway down, we begin a section checking assumptions and screening data. I'm on page 13 now. We have the results of this descriptives procedure that we have just requested. This is the descriptives table. You've seen tables like this before. Under the heading descriptives, we see the names of the statistics being reported, N or sample size, how many are missing, what's the mean score, what's median score, and so forth. These columns provide statistics for the criterion variable, reading enjoyment, obtained under each of the three conditions. Below size 06, we see statistics for reading enjoyment scores obtained under the 6-inch screen condition. Under size 10, our reading enjoyment scores, statistics for reading enjoyment scores obtained under the 10-inch screen condition. And in this column, we see statistics for reading enjoyment scores obtained under the 12-inch screen condition. What do we have here? All 10 participants provided scores under each of the three conditions. Sure enough, we've got 10, 10, and 10. That's good news. To the right of the heading mean, we have mean scores on reading enjoyment under the three conditions. And to the right of standard deviation, we have standard deviations for those three conditions. To the right of the heading minimum, we don't see any minimum scores lower than they should be. Scores on the dependent variable should have ranged from 1 to 100. If we saw negative numbers here, we would be in trouble, but there's no negative numbers. Similarly, to the right of maximum, we should not see any maximum numbers here bigger than 100 because scores should not have been any bigger than 100. And sure enough, we don't see anything out of bounds like that. No problems with skewness and kurtosis. When we look at skewness statistics for the three conditions, they're all between +1 and -1. When we look at kurtosis statistics for the three conditions, they are all between +1 and -1. So no obvious problems with skewness or kurtosis. We continue. Page 15, we have QQ plots. You'll recall that with the QQ plot, if the distribution is perfectly normally distributed, then all of the dots should fall exactly on the straight diagonal line that runs diagonally through the figure. These dots are pretty darn close to that diagonal line, so there's no obvious problems, no obvious departures from the normal distribution when we look at people that produce scores under the 6-inch condition. Under the 10-inch condition, they're pretty close to the straight line, so it's probably normally distributed. In the 12-inch condition, pretty close to the straight line, so it's pretty close to being normally distributed. For each of the three samples in the current investigation, data points fall pretty close to the corresponding diagonal line. With that cleared out of the way, we can move to the statistical procedure that we really want to perform, which is the ANOVA. Bottom page 15, we have the section that begins requesting the ANOVA. Now, a word of warning here. You're going to find that requesting the within subjects ANOVA is not going to be intellectually challenging. What it is tedious. It is step by step. You have to tell Jamovi exactly what the name of your dependent variable is going to be, what are the conditions of your independent variable, which variables contain scores under a given condition. It is going to be a lengthier process than we've experienced with some of our other analyses. Not intellectually challenging, but it is step-by-step tedious. I'm on page 16 now. We're going to begin the ANOVA procedure. Once again, click the Analyses tab at the top of the interface if necessary to reveal your Analyses ribbon. From that ribbon, select the icon headed ANOVA, and from the resulting menu, select Repeated Measures ANOVA. That's just another name for Within Subjects ANOVA. This produces the analysis options panel for repeated measures ANOVA. You know it's the analysis options panel for that procedure because it says repeated measures ANOVA. As is usually the case, the large box on the left side is the variable list. It's the list of all the variables in the data set that theoretically might be analyzed. On the right, we have a bunch of boxes, and we'll take them one at a time. The top right box is headed repeated measures factors, RM factor 1, repeated measures factor 1. Here, we're going to tell Jamovi the name of our independent variable and names to give to the three conditions under that independent variable. How is that done? I'm on page 18 now. First, we're going to give a name for our independent variable. You click this heading, which is currently RM factor 1, and replace it with the name screen size, because that's the name of our independent variable. That's what we want to replace RM factor 1. This heading that's currently level 1, we want to replace it with a meaningful name for our first treatment condition. So click level 1 and replace it with 6-inch, because that's the name of one of our treatment conditions, 6-inch screen. Click level 2, replace it with 10-inch. Click level 3 and replace it with 12-inch. Scroll down to page 19. And this is what the repeated measures factor box should look like when we are finished. We've told Jamovi, name of the independent variable is screen size. One of the treatment conditions I'm going to call 6-inch. One I'm going to call 10-inch. One I'm going to call 12-inch. Oh, wait a minute. There's a level 4 down here. Don't worry about that. That is faded out, and that means that Jamovi is going to ignore it unless we clicked it and did something with it, which we are not. This repeated measures factor box is complete, but we have more to do. Our next task is to indicate which of our three variables contains scores. Contains reading enjoyment scores obtained under the 6-inch condition, which contains scores obtained under the 10-inch condition, and so forth. From the large variable list box on the left side of the panel, select the variable size 06 and click the right pointing arrow to move it into the large box headed repeated measures cells on the right side of the panel. You must move it into the cell that is currently labeled 6-inch. You can drag things around if necessary. From the variable list on the left side of the panel, select the variable size 10 and click the right pointing arrow to move it into the repeated measures cell, into the cell currently named 10-inch. And from the variable list on the left, select size 12 and move it into the repeated measures cell, into the cell currently named 12-inch. When finished, your analysis options panel should resemble the following. Let's back up and make sure everybody knows where we're finding these. We need to find, okay, notice we now have on the right side of the interface, we have a box headed repeated measures cells. And within this box, we have the names 6-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch. That's because up here we told Jamovi that one of my treatment conditions is going to be named 6-inch, one is going to be named 10-inch, one is going to be named 12-inch. Jamovi needs to know, okay, which of the variables in your data set contains enjoyment scores obtained under the 6-inch condition? Which of the variables contains scores obtained under the 10-inch condition, and so forth. So I'm going to take my existing Jamovi variable named size 06. You remember size 06 contains reading enjoyment scores obtained under the 6-inch condition. I'm going to click this. I'm going to click the right pointing arrow and move it here so that it is in the same box as 6-inch. That's my way of telling Jamovi that the variable called size 06 contains scores on reading enjoyment for the 6-inch screen condition. Drag it to this location. I'm going to take the variable size 10 and move it to this location for 10-inch. Size 12, move it to this location for 12-inch. When I have accomplished this, I'm on page 20. My completed repeated measures cells box will look like this. The treatment condition 6-inch, scores for it is found in the variable name size 06. The treatment condition 10-inch, you'll find scores for it in the variable name size 10, and so forth. I have completed my repeated measures cell box. But don't celebrate yet, there is more to do. Next, we will assign meaningful name to the dependent variable on investigation. On the right side, near the bottom of the current panel, is a box headed dependent variable label. Inside this box is the current name dependent. Double-click inside this box and type the word enjoyment, because that basically is the name of our dependent variable. I'm on page 21 now. Page 21, there is a box below the heading dependent variable label. Whatever is in there, double-click it and replace it with the name enjoyment. That's the name of our dependent variable. While you're in this vicinity, also click the box partial eta squared. That's going to be our omnibus index of effect size for this analysis. So we have completed this section of the analysis options panel. But don't celebrate yet because there is more to do. I am still on page 21. Toward the bottom, page 21. Requesting tests of sphericity. Locate the horizontal bar labeled assumption checks and click the small arrow to the left of that heading, if necessary, to reveal the options below. Check the boxes headed sphericity tests and none. When finished, the panel should resemble the following. Look for the bar headed assumptions check. If you don't see anything below it, click the arrow to the left of its name to reveal the contents. Make sure that these boxes are checked. Check the box for sphericity checks. Under sphericity corrections, check the box headed none. The reasons for requesting these options will be revealed later. That is the top of page 22. Let's continue on page 22. Requesting post-hoc tests. You'll remember from our chapter on one-way ANOVA with one between subjects factor, anytime you do an analysis of variance in which the independent variable has 3 or more treatment conditions, if your f-test is significant, you know that at least one condition must be different from at least one other condition. They don't necessarily know which is significantly different from which. To find out, you have to perform some kind of a multiple comparison procedure such as post-hoc test. That's what we're going to do here. Requesting post-hoc test. Locate the horizontal bar headed post-hoc test. If necessary, click small arrow to the left of the heading to reveal the contents. The initial panel will probably look like this. So click the arrow if necessary to reveal the contents of post-hoc test. Notice the name of my independent variable, screen size, already appears in the box on the left. Select screen size and move it to the large box on the right to this position. I go now to page 23. I have selected screen size. I have moved it to the bar on the box on the right. Below the heading corrections, check the box headed Bonferroni. If any other boxes are checked, you can uncheck them. When finished, your post-hoc panel should resemble the following. I have moved screen size here, and I've told Jamovi, I want you to do the Bonferroni post-hoc test so I can tell which conditions are significantly different under this screen size independent variable. This is what your post-hoc test screen should look like when finished. Okay, we've requested post-hoc test, but we are still not finished. We need to request tables of means and plots of means. I'm toward the bottom of page 23. We come to this section. Requesting tables and plots of means. Locate the horizontal bar headed estimated marginal means and click the small arrow to the left of this heading if necessary to reveal its contents. The initial panel should resemble the following. I go to page 24. Okay, find the bar headed estimated marginal means. If necessary, click the arrow so you can see the contents below. The box on the left contains the name of my independent variable, screen size, and the box on the right is headed marginal means. It starts off having this heading term 1, and the box below it is empty. What am I supposed to do with this? The box begins looking like this. What am I to do? I go to page 25. Move the categorical predictor variable here. So select screen size, click the right pointing arrow, and move it into this little box below the heading term 1. This is telling Jamovi, I want you to compute means for me, the means of this treatment of this independent variable called screen size. Check these boxes to request these options. Request marginal means plots, marginal means tables. General options use equal cell weights. And when you create a plot for me, yes, do show me the observed scores on the dependent variable. So this is what my estimated marginal means box should look like when complete. What next? We've learned that there's no end to the options you need to request when you're doing a repeated measures ANOVA, but we in fact can rest. That will be enough of that. We've now requested ANOVA with one within subject factor, test of sphericity, post-hoc tests, tables of means, and plots of means. In the following section, we'll learn how to make sense of all of these results, but not this week. We've learned enough for this week. You're now ready to get started on your exercise in which you'll analyze a different data set. So begin work on Jamovi Exercise 120.01, ANOVA, one within factor. For today, you'll complete only task 1, performing the analysis in Jamovi. You will complete task 1. Let's try that again. For today, you will complete only task 1, performing the analysis in Jamovi. You will complete task 2 and task 3 during next week's class meeting. You do not need to upload anything or complete any multiple choice quiz today. You will have your hands full just doing task 1, performing the analysis in Jamovi. It'll be basically the same procedures I've illustrated in this set of lecture notes, except you will be analyzing a different data set from a different fictitious investigation with different variables. So that is your initial exposure to lecture notes, chapter 120, ANOVA with one within subjects factor. Next week, we'll look at the second half of this chapter and learn how to make sense of all of these statistical results we have just requested.